Hello, my internet infantry, and welcome to this. This is MMA AM. It's half morning show, half MMA show, pretty much all bullshit. I am the man who works harder than a Pensacola stripper, LK from Kocosports.net, and I'm joined by Kyle at last from Loudmouth MMA Podcast. Welcome to the show. And the funniest thing is, he was the guy who I went to. I was like, okay, I'm starting an MMA podcast, and I was like, okay, cool. Can you come on my show? He's like, no, but not right now. But I've got that guy who can join, that guy who could join. So we've managed to actually get a great like regime of different co-hosts so that every single day I'm on here, I can almost guarantee I'm going to have at least one co-host. So that's exciting. I appreciate all the effort. So everyone wondering how I got so many co-hosts, this is the man to thank. I appreciate it, and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, man. And there's plenty more where that came from. We are a very, very strong community, especially on Twitter. There's a lot of us.
Dude, this is the strangest thing, okay? Because if in pro wrestling, I can only have, for instance, a co-host. Okay, they'll come on and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I'm joining the channel." I was like, first of all, no, it's not my channel either, so I don't know what you're coming to me for. And then it was like, "Oh yeah, but I can join." It was like, "Have you ever done a podcast before?" No, but I can join. It's like, "But have you ever done a podcast?" No, but I can join. I can help out. I was like, "No, that's not how it works." With MMA fans, they're respectful, they're appreciative. I've had Blake on, I've had Keith on. And then I had Sean on Monday, and yourself, all just great human beings. And it's just so different. Like, the MMA fans, you can tell which wrestling fans watch MMA as well. Like, I can legit tell just by the way they talk on Twitter and Facebook and on the YouTube live comments. I can tell. But the MMA community, it's like they want everyone to succeed. Like, I want that podcast to succeed. I want you all to succeed. Whereas with the wrestling, community, it's bashing of fans. Like, for instance, there's a guy now who comments on every single one of our Impact Wrestling reviews, and like, he's after a job at Impact Wrestling, but for sucking cock for some reason. And anyway, if we say anything negative, he will send trolls over to bash in the comments. And it's like, what the fuck is this? Can't we like help each other out? I was like, oh.
I mean, that's also, I think, comes with success. I mean, you're doing something. I think it's, I didn't know about your show. I'm not a wrestling fan in the slightest, so I knew nothing about your show before you reached out to me, to do the MMA stuff. But you're doing a fantastic job, so we appreciate having you in the community, because the more the merrier. The sport needs to grow. UFC is not that big, and in my mind, UFC is more enjoyable than football, American football. And I am a huge football fan. I always have been. I'm wearing a Cincinnati Bengals hoodie right now. I'm a huge football fan, and I think the UFC is better. I think it's more enjoyable. I don't know. I love MMA. It's not big enough. So the more people we can get in this sport, and I think a lot of people, certainly in the podcasting community, I think that's what you're feeling. I think you're feeling people who kind of feel marginalized a little bit within the, if you look at all the top sports. I don't know if wrestling fans necessarily want wrestling to get any bigger, I don't know if that's really what they want. MMA fans desperately want MMA to be as big as humanly possible. We want to sell out stadiums, and we're not there yet. And I don't know when we're going to get there, but we're not there yet. So I think that might be what you're feeling. I mean, certainly with us podcasters, I've only been doing this podcast since early November, and the people who I've met who have helped lift me up has been fantastic. Blake being one of them, who you just had on the show. I mean, that's a guy who had been around for a while, who saw something in me and kind of took me under his wing a little bit and showed me the ropes. And here I am, man. I mean, I've talked to some of the biggest names in the UFC. It's crazy.
And now you're retaining the favor by putting me under your wing. So when it all comes full circle, there'll be another little MMA guy who I'll bring up.
Comes right along, man.
And the thing is, though, I'm actually angry at myself for the past few weeks. Like, why didn't I get into MMA early? It's just, pro wrestling fan since birth. Like, I wasn't born in 2001, but that's when I started watching pro wrestling. So that's a decade and a half. And obviously the brainwashing of, the WWE in particular, and I like to call the WWE, if you turn it upside down, is MME, which stands for McMahon's Marketing Enterprise. They are incredible at marketing. They can brainwash.
They really are.
They will make you feel that they're the only game in town. There's no other wrestling companies, and there's no other, UFC, that's the crappy stuff. And it was just, okay. And you feel a certain loyalty towards it. And then it was like, okay, and I became Kocosports.net because I wasn't on the site before, I was just on the channel. But in December, they were like, okay, look, we appreciate your loyalty now, blah, blah, blah. We can trust you with everything. So you can come on and do news, come on and do the site. It's like, okay, cool. And then I realized, oh shit, this is a combat sports site. I'm in a bit of trouble if I just cover pro wrestling. So it's like boxing, nah. But MMA, I've watched some, fights, watched CM Punk fight Brock Lesnar. Anytime there's a former pro wrestler on, I'd watch the fight. And I just got, into it, and I bought Fight Pass, and it's just fucking incredible. And I'm pissed off I didn't get into it earlier. I think the fact that I just thought it would be boring until there's a knockout, but that's really, really not it. It's so technical, and it's all, signed. Oh, it's just brilliant, and I'm so into it. I'm actually excited for the UFC 208 card, because this will be my first proper full pay-per-view, because I'm going to watch the early prelims, the prelims, and the pay-per-view.
This is probably a tough first pay-per-view, as far as pay-per-views are concerned, but that's what a lot of people said about UFC 206. A lot of people with the lead up to UFC 206, and I was absolutely one of those people, where leading up to that card, I'm like, this is a glorified fight night, right? So you have your fight nights, and you have your UFC on Fox, and right. So I was like, this is just a glorified fight night, right? Maybe it's a good like UFC on Fox card, but that's really it, right? Leading up to that. Well, UFC 206 turned out to be one of the greatest cards in UFC history. And if you haven't seen that card, go back and watch that main card, because it was absolutely, every fight was incredible, right? I mean, it just, incredible card, incredible night of fights, all the way to our Fight Pass prelims, all the way through the main event. Incredible top to bottom. And that was a card that everybody was saying was going to be awful. So you're seeing that narrative now with UFC 208, where a lot of people are not very excited about this card, right? As far as pay-per-views are concerned, nothing's jumping out at the page, right? Or nothing's jumping off the page right now, to be honest with you. And I've analyzed this stuff every which way from Sunday, and nothing's really jumping out at me, But, I mean, we were all wrong about UFC 206, right? I'm just going to keep saying that. We were all wrong about UFC 206. So let's see. This could be something. And there's definitely some interesting storylines, which we'll obviously get into in a second. There's some interesting storylines here. But yeah, I think overall, this might be a tough first card. UFC 209 is going to be really awesome, though. So be on the lookout for that one, because that's going to be a great card.
Awesome, but maybe with the UFC 206, because obviously the numbers for that weren't the best. So I think it was 150,000, if I'm correct. I think it was 150, 160,000.
It was low, and this one might be lower. I mean, this is a hard card to sell.
With that in mind, because you just said maybe the MMA fans be like, you know what? Maybe we can't judge, a book by its card. You can't really judge the whole thing by its card. Yeah. So maybe they might be thinking, oh wait, UFC 206, I regret not buying and watching that live. So fuck it, I might watch 208 live and pay for it.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. I mean, that's what I'm hoping. I'm not expecting it because it is so soon, but that's what I'm hoping.
Fingers crossed. Right. So what we've done, I will be placing a £1 bet on every single one of these fights. That's the story going into the pay-per-view this Saturday.
Okay.
So I've had Blake from Joe's Loaded MMA and Keith from MMATakeover.com all give their predictions. Now, they've both given different ones. So yours is kind of the tiebreaker here on who I actually go for on some of them. Some of them are like, for example, one apiece, and some both went for. So it'll be kind of interesting, because I want to see three, hardcore MMA fans' opinions, so I can kind of then compromise them and say, okay, that's where I'm going to go with. Because I'm going to go in there with, well, we're now down to 11 fights now, aren't we? So £11 in there, in the Paddy Power, and just bet £1. Actually, I'll probably put 20 in and maybe bet £2 on each main card fight. I think that might be a bit more interesting. But I don't know. Because with wrestling, you can't really do that. You can't really bet on a predetermined finish. And the funny thing is, they've started doing that on Paddy Power. And you can tell who's going to win the fight, because there'll be a guy inside the organization betting heavy on the guy who they know is going to win to win money. So you can kind of go, oh, great. There's now spoilers released from the bookies, which is absolutely hysterical.
That's funny how that works. Yeah.
So we'll go with you. So we'll start at the top. Okay. We'll start right at the top. Let me get the fucking match card out. By the way, I don't know what site you use. I use the UFC website because they've got a really good breakdown of each fighter and a really good visual. And then I'm also using newsday.com because they have a really simplistic layout of their fight card.
So I don't know anything about Newsday. But I use Tapology. That is my personal
Tapology.
Yep. Tapology is my personal.
Does it have good detail analysis of each fighter on it?
That is the only thing that I use for research. So when you go onto the site, you can click on each person's name. When you're first just looking at it, it says their weight class. It says the weight class of the fight. It says so the fights are in order. And then each person's name is clickable, as well as their divisions. So you can actually click on their division to see their divisions as well. So there's not like a write-up with each thing. I don't know if that's what you're referring to. There's not like a write-up, like, here, let us tell you about this fight or whatever. There's none of that. But if you click on the person's name, so like here I got Holly Holm, it'll bring up Holly Holm's record, and it'll also bring up fights that were canceled. So for instance... So, for instance, it says, canceled bout Raquel Pennington, UFC 181. The reason was a Holm neck injury. So, if you're doing your research, if you're using Tapology, you can actually go, oh, Holm had a neck injury back in December of 2014. That's good to know, right? Like, that's a good little piece of information to have if you're trying to have like a little tiebreaker if you're trying to pick her or not, right? Like, is she injury prone? Right. So now that's not that big of a deal, what I just said. But some stuff you find on Tapology is kind of a big deal. You're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that he canceled 2 fights in a row. And you wouldn't know that unless you're looking at Tapology.
Yeah, that's good. I note that. I've got that noted down there. So we'll start right at the top. So we'll go. I fucking clicked back off it again. The women's featherweight title. Before we actually get down to your prediction on that, it's enough.
Sorry, say that one more time. You cut out.
Oh, sorry. Do you think they've done a good enough job of marketing this event?
Marketing this event in particular, maybe. Certainly the lead up to the 145 has not been dealt with correctly. They should have had other 145ers fighting, right? So there's a couple different options. One, you should have had other 145ers fighting this entire time to kind of do like a tournament style to decide who floats to the top. So that way you can have an actual title unification as opposed to whatever this is, right? Do a tournament style. Take 2 events where you have a majority of 145 women fighting. Now, I understand some of the politics there. How much is a mostly woman card going to sell? Right, so that might be part of why they didn't do that. I don't know, but anyway, do kind of a tournament style, right? You could even use Invicta for something like this. I'm sure they would agree to it. But regardless, so that way you're not just picking. So Holly Holm is coming off of 2 straight losses, and Germaine de Randamie hasn't fought in a year, and that's who we're saying is the best 145ers in the world. Why? Right? No one's ever explained to me why these 2 people are the best 145er. I don't think that either one of them are the best 145er. Right? Now, we know the issue with Cyborg. If you haven't been like a long-time fan of UFC, you might not know, or of MMA in general, you might not know a lot about Cyborg. But Cyborg is a monster who fights at 145 and is pretty much unstoppable. I mean, I can't imagine anybody ever beating her at 145, although she may not even be able to make 145 anymore. But anyway, you have Julia Budd floating around out there. You still have Tweet and Anderson, and there's just tons of women who are not in the UFC who are true 145ers. These are bloated 135ers. Right, that's all this is. They're taking 2 bigger 135ers and saying, all right, you guys fight for a 145 belt, as opposed to reaching out to Ryzen, reaching out to Invicta, reaching out to World Series of Fighting. Bellator is building up a 145 and getting those people, right, getting true 145ers. So, sorry I went on a long rant, but that's kind of my issue with this one. So the way they're marketing it is fine, but the lead up to it has been awful. This is just not, they did not deal with this correctly on any level, I don't think. I don't think it's the right people fighting. I don't think this fight should be happening right now. They rushed it for some reason. I think Bellator is debuting a 145, so maybe they're trying to beat them to it. I don't know. I don't really know what the reason is, but yeah, somebody coming off 2 losses and someone who hasn't fought in a year, like that's who's going to become champion. That just doesn't seem right to me.
And the way I see this, maybe that's why, back to the marketing point, maybe that's why they haven't really promoted the fights. Now, the way I've seen the commercials anyway, the story of this is not it's Holly Holm versus Germaine de Randamie.
Anderson Silva.
Not even that. The story is witness history when we crown the first ever UFC women's featherweight title. That's what this story is all about. People who pay the pay-per-view. they're not paying to see Holly Holm versus Germaine. Well, they are in essence, but they're technically being brought to. The draw is history. The draw is the belt. And I was having an interesting talk with Keith on yesterday's MMA AM, talking about how, he was saying, sadly, the belts sadly don't mean shit. Conor McGregor could outdraw any championship belt, same as Ronda Rousey, Anderson Silva back in the day. But if this is a good pay-per-view buy, do you reckon the UFC won't go, oh, great job, women. Great job. Will they go, we said we were making history. They were going to turn up anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very valid point. I hadn't really heard that point yet. I didn't get a chance to listen to that show. But he's right about one thing. The belts do not mean anything. Certainly not these interim belts, which is essentially what this belt is. This is basically an interim belt. No one has fought in that division, right? So are we really expecting that either Holly Holm or de Randamie, right, which I don't really feel too strongly about either one winning here. I'm leaning de Randamie just to get that out of the way, but I don't have a strong feeling about it. I don't trust either of these women to really get the job done. I certainly have a hard time trusting Holly Holm, given what we've seen from her. But anyway, are we really expecting either one of these women to hold on to this belt for any period of time? Not really. I mean, I can't think of anybody who is. As soon as either one of them face a true contender, they're going to lose. So I'm kind of looking at this as an interim belt anyway, right? Like, let's let a couple fights happen. Whoever floats to the top, that's the real belt, right? Let somebody truly get the belt by earning it and then defending it. That's the person who gets it.
Okay.
Now maybe that is one of them because, it's going to take a while to really build up like a crop of people. So maybe if de Randamie does win here, maybe she can beat Megan Anderson if she comes in, right? Maybe she can beat someone like Julia Budd, maybe. But I just have a hard time believing that. None of them can beat Cyborg, period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Cyborg would be a thousand favorite above both of these women.
Wow. But
yeah,
and back to your point of Anderson and Tweet, I know they had a fight in Victor 21. Was that a good fight, and is it worth watching on my old Fight Pass gimmick tonight before I go to bed?
Absolutely. Anderson finished her.
A good, interesting fight?
Maybe, I mean, sort of. It's interesting if you see it through the lens, if you see it through the lens of what's about to happen in the UFC, it certainly makes it more interesting because you're like, oh, she could be something. She's really good on the mic. She's attractive-ish, which that's what people look for in the UFC. I'm not saying it's right, but it is what it is. I mean, she's tatted up and she's got an attitude and, she would fit really well with UFC's marketing style. So I say it's interesting on that front. And Tweet is she's older, but she is still a very good fighter. If Tweet comes over to the UFC, she'll beat a large majority of the women who they're going to get in, So it's an interesting fight under that prism. It's not an interesting fight if you're just watching it just to watch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I might give it a watch anyway because I like to watch.
I would.
But with that in mind, what I've been doing the past few nights is I've been clicking on the Fight Pass, scrolling onto the fight card for tomorrow's UFC 208, and clicking on some of the guys like Anderson Silva, Derek Brunson, and looking at some of their last fights. That's what I've been trying to do, try and get a backstory of everyone fighting. I've been trying to do anyway. But we'll go straight to it. So again, whoever you go for, because obviously you haven't watched the other two shows, so you kind of don't know who they've gone for. So that'll be interesting. And then we can see at the end of this show who have you all gone for one, have you all gone for the other, and who actually bet for. So with that in mind, main event, obviously women's featherweight title, Holly Holm versus Germaine de Randamie. Who have you got winning that one?
I got Germaine de Randamie probably by decision. And again, kind of like I said in that little rant I was doing earlier, I've been ranting a lot this episode, but as I said on my last rant, I don't feel very strongly about it. I mean, but I do think that she has the tools here. If you look at Holly Holm, she hasn't matched up very well with jiu-jitsu or any type of Muay Thai, which, that's That's de Randamie's background there. The other thing is, de Randamie knocked out a man in her same weight class. There's a video of that you can go watch. She knocked out a man in her same weight class. She is extremely powerful. Her issue has always been she lacks some technique because she was dominating the kickboxing world at a time and in a region where kickboxing wasn't that big of a deal, right? It's kind of like what you saw with Rousey, where Rousey was destroying these women because there weren't that many to choose from. So as soon as everybody caught up with her, look what happened, right? And now she's probably never going to come back. And if she does, she probably is going to lose because now the top people figured her out. So that's kind of the story with de Randamie a little bit. She was kickboxing at a time and in a region where it wasn't necessarily that well known, which means there wasn't that much competition, right? However, she dominated. She was a dominant kickboxer, world champion, and she has good Muay Thai. So Holly Holm, if you remove that Ronda Rousey win, what is Holly Holm? And we saw after that Nunes win that maybe Rousey was done. I mean, maybe she was done. And maybe we're giving that win over Rousey way too much credence here. Holly Holm barely beat Raquel Pennington, right? Barely beat Raquel Pennington. If you put Germaine de Randamie up against Raquel Pennington right now, she probably knocks her out, right? So now MMA math is a little fickle, but I think to me, that's one of the biggest things. It's like before Rousey, Holly Holm was not beating up on people, Even in her regional days, she was not beating up on people, right? Now, the one good thing for Holly Holm is that her boxing accolades probably outweigh de Randamie's kickboxing accolades, right? Holly Holm was a very, very dominant boxer. However, a lot of her boxing was predicated on counter-striking. And that's a thing with a lot of boxing, obviously, but with her more so. I mean, it's very, very counter-striking. And I do think that de Randamie has a better ring IQ. So if you got two counter boxers standing across from each other, the one who has a better ring IQ, I think gets the nod. And I think that's de Randamie.
Okay, so I will be placing a £2 bet on de Randamie because you and Keith from the MMA Takeover, you both picked de Randamie and then Blake picked Holm. So
he's a little biased though because he's met Holm. First of all, he's met her, he's taken a picture with her, and he's been to her gym. So you can't trust him.
He was a bit biased in some of the fights, but I like it. It was interesting because it gave his personal feel.
Of course,
it was like some of them were just like, yeah, I met her. I'll vote for her. I met her. She's a lovely woman. Yeah. I like that. That's
what we love about Blake, man. He brings a different flavor to the MMA pod. A lot of the MMA podcasts kind of blend together a little bit. So you want unique voices, and I think he's a unique voice.
Oh, for sure. And then what we got next? We got Anderson Silva versus Derek Brunson. What's your thoughts on this one?
Give me Anderson Silva all day, every day. And if anybody told you different, call him back and yell. I'm just kidding. Because I mean, again, you do not know what Anderson Silva is going to show up here. I'm sure if you've gone back and watched any film, you probably realize that Anderson Silva is the greatest fighter in UFC history, period. And there really is no question. He defended a belt that was very hard to hold on to, given the talent that was in that division. He defended it 10 times. He still holds the record for the most title defenses. The only person who's coming close now is Demetrius Johnson, who I believe is at 8. Might be at 9. If Demetrius Johnson chooses to stay at 125, he will probably beat Anderson Silva's record. Because I can't imagine anybody beating Demetrius Johnson. I can't even picture it. But that's how Anderson Silva was. Before that Weidman loss, nobody ever expected this man to lose. His style is so funky. Everything about him, he's impossible to rile up. He has such a calming presence. It doesn't matter what's happening. He never freaks out. And before that Weidman loss, everybody thought he was, just indestructible. Then he gets knocked out by Weidman in one of the biggest upsets in UFC history. He then fights Weidman again, and that's where he has that brutal leg break. I don't know if you've seen that video, but it is hard to watch. Google Anderson broken leg, Anderson Silva broken leg, and watch that video. I mean, it's hard to watch, but go ahead.
Does he break someone's leg?
No, he breaks his own leg while kicking Chris Weidman in the shin. His leg snaps in half and folds around Chris Weidman. I mean, it is a brutal leg break. So that was the rematch.
Oh, that's disgusting. That's absolutely revolting.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Let me have a look again. Slow-mo. Oh, it literally folds around him. Oh, that's absolutely revolting. I regret watching that. Oh,
there you go.
That was brutal.
Yeah, I wasn't lying, man. So anyway, that's only one fight removed from what was going to be his 11th title defense. And so he lost to Weidman the first time, legitimately gets knocked out. That was his first loss in umpteen fights. It was supposed to be 11th title defense. So the UFC said, yeah, you get to rematch Chris Weidman. That's what happened in the rematch. And then he hasn't been the same ever since, right? You know, he pops hot.
He's been on a losing streak, if I'm correct.
Yeah, well, he pops hot, and then he beats Nick Diaz, but they both get overturned because he pops hot, which might have been the second time that happened. And by pops hot, I mean he tests positive for steroids or for PEDs or whatever. Yeah. I'm remembering this off the top of my head because I'm not looking at it. But I think after the Nick Diaz, declared a draw or whatever, or a no contest, but he did in fact beat him. Then he loses to Michael Bisping, but he knocks Michael Bisping out in the second round. He knocks him out. You need to watch that fight because in the second round, as the bell's happening, he knees Michael Bisping in the face, and Michael Bisping goes night-night. But it happens at the bell, and Michael Bisping is one of the toughest sons of bitches alive, so he's able to regain his composure, sort of, and winds up winning that fight by kind of a weird decision because Anderson didn't engage enough. And then he takes a fight with the 205 defending world champion and Daniel Cormier on a week's notice on the biggest card in UFC history, UFC 200, right? 15 pounds out of his weight class or 20 pounds out of his weight class, right? On a week's notice against one of the toughest, pound for pound guys in the world, and actually puts up a fight, like legitimately puts up a fight against him. Or some would argue that he was able to win the third round. I mean, everyone just thinks that Anderson Silva's done here, and let's crack open the history book a little bit. He's not done now, but again, you don't know what kind of effect this is having on his body, right? Obviously he's losing for a reason, but he's going up against a guy and Derek Brunson, where Derek Brunson's style plays so much into Anderson Silva's style, right? That it's hard not to pick Anderson Silva here. The type of guy that Anderson Silva is supposed to beat is the exact style that Derek Brunson has, which is no ring IQ and is willing to just rush in on you. That's the kind of guy that Anderson Silva needs. So that's my pick. But again, Anderson Silva is 108 years old, so I don't know. You know what I mean? He could very easily lose this.
But so with that in mind, do you think that the UFC did this deliberately to be like, okay, if we get Anderson Silva back on the winning streak, get him back on the chase for the belt, maybe we can get a bit of, steam on the guy and get a bit of, popularity on the guy again for maybe a title fight down the line?
No.
You don't think that?
No. I think they said, okay, we really need money, but we're also trying to do this other thing, which is kind of early on in the year, create this 145 so that way we have storylines in November, right? Because that's where the true 145 women's division storylines are going to come into play. If Holly Holm wins, you got a potential Ronda Rousey fight for the 145 belt, right? So they're trying to create this division now, and they're like, oh shit, no one cares right now. So spin that top over there, whatever name it lands on. Let's get that person in here. GSP, Nick Diaz, right? These guys that haven't fought in a while, older guys, kind of Bellator style. Who can we get in? Oh, Anderson Silva. Okay, let's get Anderson Silva. And Derek Brunson just lost to Robert Whittaker, which it was a really bad loss. Let's see what this guy's actually made of. That's what I think happened.
But what a win this would be for Brunson if he knocks off Silva. Like, that'll probably be the defining moment of his career.
Huge. Very, very huge. Yep. And same for Anderson Silva. If Anderson Silva gets a win, it shows that he can hang out with the young guys. A guy that, before he lost to Robert Whittaker, had a 5-fight first-round finish knockout thing going, or 4 fights. 4 or 5 fight streak going of first-round knockouts. That's huge if he's able to get that win.
So with that in mind, like, obviously the mentality of both these fighters, you just said them, I think Brunson, though, will think, you know what? If I beat Silva, I'll be on the name of everyone's lips as the guy who defeated Anderson Silva. Like, that will always be remembered. He's the guy who knocked out or defeated Anderson Silva. So that motivation will drive him harder working out, will drive him harder, you know, in the training camps. To me, even though 2 people have voted Silva, you and Blake, I'm actually going to put the £2 on Brunson because I think he has the most
no problem.
to gain.
Absolutely, 100%.
I just have this feeling in my heart, like, he has the most to gain from this. Like, Silva maybe, he said I was watching some of the packages, doing a little bit of homework, and he says he just loves fighting. Like, he just adores fighting. There's loving to fight, and there's wanting to win, because you will make a lot more dollar in the future if you do. And that's why I'm gonna go Brunson on that one.
I got no problem with that. Although I will warn you, Anderson Silva is by far the weirdest person that I've ever seen in the UFC. So he also just kind of just says things. Like, he's super strange. Like, and again, it's one of those things where unless you've had a lot of exposure to him, you wouldn't know. I'd have to watch the interview and kind of read his body language to know, like, what's actually happening. Because he's such a weird guy. Like, it's hard to even explain.
Have they, before we get on to the next one, have they actually done the press conference yet where they do the trash talking? Has that happened yet?
I don't know if they did one for UFC 208, to be honest with you. I don't know if they did.
I guess, because I was talking about that yesterday with Keith, and we were talking about how none of them trash talk. Like, none of the main fighters trash talk, so is there even point of doing one?
Certainly not. Anderson Silva's not a trash talker, unless it's like Chael Sonnen or something who manages to get his goat, but and Bisping. But even then, he wasn't really going back and forth. Holly Holm and de Randamie sure as hell don't trash talk. Who's right underneath them? We'll figure that out as we go along. But yeah, not a lot of trash talkers in this card.
Well, I hope there is one, because I always enjoy them. But anyway, we'll move on to the next one. We have Ronaldo Souza versus, how do I fucking pronounce this imbecile's name?
Jacare Souza versus Tim Boetsch. Tim Boetsch.
Boetsch. So there's the E and the S. The E and the S don't count. Okay, Boetsch.
Yep.
Boetsch.
Tim Boetsch.
Tim Boetsch. Just to let you know, before you give your prediction, both of these guys think Souza's got the win.
Oh yeah, this is a fight that makes absolute. In fact, we're going to talk about it for 30 seconds because that's all you need to spend on it. Jacare Souza is the probably between him, William Hayes, maybe Glover Teixeira, but it's certainly Jacare, which is Ronaldo Souza. It's Jacare is his name. It's Jacare and Hayes. Those are the two just locks. Don't overthink it. If you're making parlays, throw those 2 people on every single parlay. If either one of them loses, then prepare because the apocalypse is looming. I mean, like hell just froze over if either one of those people lose.
And if all these people lose, I will block each one of you.
Absolutely, I would too.
Yeah, I lost. That's the thing, though. I like betting just £1 or £2. You know, if I lose £20, it doesn't cost me anything to get the pay-per-view. Like, it's not $60 for the pay-per-view. It's on BT Sport, which is free because I don't pay for the package.
Nice.
You know, my parents do, so I don't have to pay for anything.
I wish I had that. I'm trying to see what the 20 pounds to dollars ratio is. Oh, it's really about the same. It's about $25.
Yeah, so I'm only $25. It's not really that bad, to be honest.
No.
Even if I just win a few fights, you know, I might get my money back anyway.
There you go.
Who we got next? We had Jard Canoy. God, I tried trouble with this yesterday, and I sadly
You're
didn't.
okay.
I know it's Poirier. I know Poirier.
Oh,
Dude,
okay.
that's the wrong fight. That's the wrong fight. Apologies. I went ahead. It's
You're okay.
T'Challa versus Cannonier.
Okay, so I'm not 100% sure who you're talking about. The next one on this one is Teixeira. Oh, sorry, gotcha. So it's Teixeira versus Cannonier.
Cannonier.
Teixeira versus Cannonier.
These names hurt me.
The
they really hurt me.
The hardest part of my job is pronouncing people's fucking names. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
It's horrible.
Yep,
I agree. I can cover a Japanese show. I can cover a Japanese wrestling show, and I can go Kazuchika Okada, Hiroshi Tanahashi. But when it comes to fucking names, whether it's like Cannonier and T'Challa, I literally, when we were doing the show, when he said T'Challa, I quickly noted down how to say his real name. I spelt it like Teixeira.
Yeah.
Like, oh, the bastard.
That's funny.
I'll just get used to him.
Teixeira's Cannonier. So Teixeira is the other guy that's kind of a lock here. The only thing that's going against him is just he got his clock cleaned by Anthony Johnson in 13 seconds. We've been saying that one of his teeth flew out of his mouth on the punch. It was an uppercut, and his tooth flew out. It's funny if you stand inside the octagon and there's a full moon, you can see his tooth hovering above the octagon, the shadow of his tooth. I mean, it was he got knocked into the shadow realm. I mean, it was bad. One of the most devastating knockouts I've seen. It was one of the ones where 30 seconds after the knockout, he's still wrestling with the referee because he still thinks the fight's happening. And it's like 30 seconds afterward, right? It's not like right away. It was 30, 45, a minute later. So brutal knockout. So that's really the only thing that's going against Teixeira here. But I would argue that Cannonier really doesn't have that much power. He certainly doesn't have as much power as Anthony Johnson, not even close. But you do kind of wonder, is that going to just ruin Teixeira's chin for the rest of his life? Right? I mean, am I going to be able to knock out Glover Teixeira now because that's how weak his chin became? You really don't know. However, on a skill disparity, I mean, this might as well be a pro versus an amateur. It's that big of a deal. I mean, this is a pro fighter going up against an amateur fighter, if you're just using a comparison there. But again, dude, Teixeira got knocked out cold in his last fight. So Cannonier could come in there and knock him out because Glover may not have a chin left. I really don't. I don't think that's going to happen. Obviously, I feel very confident that Teixeira wins this, but I just want to give that opposing opinion. I mean, because it is a big deal. I mean, that getting that kind of a knockout is a big deal.
Yeah. All three of you went for Teixeira, so I'm guessing you won. We go next, and the final match of the pay-per-view, we have Jim Miller versus Dustin Poirier. And lightweight division, and so far both of them went for Poirier. Is that fair?
100%. Yeah, Poirier should get this. I would argue that if the fight does get to the ground, or if Jim Miller is able to kind of show off his patented toughness and weather the storm, he could eke out a decision here. But I don't see a path for Jim Miller getting a finish, which is kind of what you need to beat Dustin Poirier. He's a guy that you need to finish to really beat him. And Jim Miller doesn't have that kind of power, and Poirier is good enough on the ground that I'm not concerned of that happening. And 100% of the boxing is on Poirier's side. I mean, Jim Miller doesn't really have any of that. So, I think this is one of those fights where you're picking Poirier because you really just can't imagine a pathway for Jim Miller winning. Like if I close my eyes and I really think about it, I have a very hard time. Like, how does Jim Miller win? Like, I can't imagine it. He's a very good fighter, but I can't even picture the path they'd have to take.
Okay. So far the pay-per-view, this is what I've got now because of what all three of you put. So I'm betting on this is the pay-per-view. De Randamie, Brunson, because that's just my gut one then. Souza, Teixeira, and Poirier. Is that a fair? Do you know that I could win my money back pretty easily, and a little bit of dosh as well?
Extremely, yep.
Awesome. So far, so well.
I would say if you're able to do prop odds, if you're gonna pick Brunson, you ever heard of, you know what prop odds are?
With the Paddy Power, which is what I use, there is nothing. The option is you bet on the fight, and that is it.
Got it. Because I was gonna say, if Brunson wins, his only path to victory is knockout. He's not winning a decision against Anderson Silva, and he's sure as hell not submitting him. So if Brunson is gonna win, it's by knockout and knockout only.
See, that's the thing. Paddy Power, if you're listening, sort your shit out. But fingers crossed, make a bit of money, and then we'll go the prelims, which on my Fight Pass in the UK, we get the early prelims as well as the prelims on the actual Fight Pass itself, which is incredible. And ours is half your price. Yours is $10. Ours is £5.99.
So ridiculous.
Maybe they must think, oh shit, it's not really selling over there. We'll just lower the price and give you the early prelims as well. The prelims after the early prelims.
No, it's because we have a deal with Fox.
Oh yeah, they can't really do that, can they?
Yep.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, the BT Sport deal just does pay-per-views and the actual fight night itself, which is handy. Here we go. So what we got here? We got prelims now. So we have Randy Brown versus Belal Muhammad. Who have you got on this one?
I've been going back and forth on this one quite a bit. Randy Brown is the better martial artist. So if I can't decide between two people, I say, okay, who is the better MMA fighter? Right? That's really what it comes down to. Who is the better straight up MMA fighter? Who has the more well-rounded game? And that's Randy Brown. I mean, I'm not betting the house on that, but Randy Brown, and I feel okay about it. If Belal Muhammad wins, it's probably by finish. He has a lot of power, but he's shown to have very poor ring IQ. And Randy Brown, I think, is shown to have some pretty decent ring IQ. And the only time that Randy Brown has truly struggled was against someone that has a grappling game, which Belal Muhammad does not. So I think for those reasons, you go Randy Brown.
So you and Keith went Brown, and Blake went Muhammad. So it's 2-1. So that favors Brown. So Brown, if you're listening,
do you want to know?
Better fucking win.
Do you want to know why Blake went below Muhammad?
I think he had an interview of him, if I'm correct.
Well, and his friend is his manager.
Oh, okay.
I told you, man, you can't trust Blake. You can't trust him, man. Love you, Blake.
Brilliant. And then we have Wilson Hayes versus Ulka Sasaki. And before I say that, I watched. I was looking at if you look at the UFC 208 from the actual, UFC website. If you actually look at, Hayes versus Suzaki, it looks like Hayes is just going to absolutely murder Sasaki just by looking at the pictures.
This is sanctioned.
Murder him, rotten.
Man, this is some like Roman Emperor shit. I mean, this fight is ridiculous. I don't know why, no one should have sanctioned this fight. That's how brutal of a beatdown that we're about to see. It's Wilson Hayes, and if I could take out a second mortgage on my house to bet on Wilson Hayes, I probably would. I mean, is
it Hayes? Sorry to cut off there. Is it Hayes or Hayes?
It's Hayes because he's Brazilian.
Hayes.
So a lot of these phonetic. Now, I am anyone who is watching this because you've listened to my podcast. First of all, thank you very much. However, they know, so I'm not going to try to lie. I'm not the authority on name pronunciations by any stretch of any imagination. However, there are some things I understand. So it's Hayes because he's Brazilian and they pronounce R's like an H. And then you pronounce the vowel. I'm not going to go into that kind of detail, but just trust me, it's Hayes.
Hayes. Okay, cool. Because plus the Blake and Keith were calling him Hayes. So I was just like, okay, Hayes. That's his name.
So here's the thing. So first of all, Keith is from New England.
New England.
Woo, buddy. That accent is unreal. And Blake is from Austin, but I don't know what he has an accent, but I don't know what you would classify it as. See, I'm from the Midwest, and Midwesterners don't really have an accent. Like that, we're like one of the few people that we don't really have an accent. I mean, my family is from the South, so sometimes a kind of Southern accent comes out, especially if I'm drunk. I get a little bit of Southern accent. Yeah, like Ohioans don't have like an accent. So that might be it too. You might also just be hearing an accent.
Maybe. But at least I got it down right now.
Watch. I'm completely wrong, and I've just been defending this for 5 minutes. And like someone with the last name of Hayes or Rice is like, dude, you have no clue what you're talking about. It's Rice.
So yeah, I'm gonna put the bet on Hayes or Highs, whatever the bloke's name is.
Got it.
And then we have Nick Lentz versus Islam Makhachev. I think I got that right.
I'm picking Islam Makhachev, but I'm doing so very reluctantly because I don't see the same like prospectivity, if that's a word, out of Islam Makhachev that everyone else seems to see from him. I don't see that. I don't see him as being this world beater. I don't see him as being like this like rising star from the combat sambo world. I really don't. I have not been that impressed. However, I also realize that I am biased, so I'm going to go against my bias and just say, yeah, I'm going to pick Islam Makhachev here. Don't overthink it. Don't let your hatred for like bad sambo get in the way. You know, pick the person who makes the most sense to win here, and that's Islam Makhachev. But I would prefer to see Nick Lentz win.
All three went Makhachev. Interesting.
Because that's what you're supposed to do. Like that's what makes the most sense. I understand that. I get it. MMA Prophet, if you're watching, I get it. I was wrong.
And Ian McCall versus Jared Brooks.
So I talked to Jared Brooks, so I am somewhat biased, but I do like him a lot. I like the cut of his jib. He is a force to be reckoned with. He has a lot of experience for a young guy. He's only 23 years old. He's 12-0, which already 12-0 at 23 is a big deal. That means you have a lot more experience than most 23-year-olds. But on top of that, he's fought in Japan more than once. He's fought in Russia. A lot of these young guys coming in have only fought in their regional scenes, right? So he's from Indiana. A lot of guys who are fighting from Indiana have only fought in Indiana or the surrounding area, right? When they're coming into the UFC, right? They're just fighting in like cow country, and that's it. They're only fighting those guys, other people that live in cow country. Where he is fighting people from Russia and Japan. Like he's actually fighting people who have grown up in the arts from other countries, and he's beating them, and he's beating them decisively, and he's never lost. He was also a kind of world renowned, not literally, but coming out of high school, he was the most highly touted prospect, and he just kind of chose not to go to college, you know, because he didn't think he was very smart and didn't want to do it. But he was like the number one pick for all the top wrestling schools in the country. So he's very, very good. He's very, very good. And all he cares about is fighting. That's it. He doesn't care about anything else. And you cannot say the same thing about Ian McCall. Ian McCall's head's been out of the game for a little while now. So I think Jared Brooks gets in there, and I think he gets the job done.
Okay, I got Brooks written down. And then we have Tybura versus Justin Willis, which has actually been cancelled, if I'm correct.
Been cancelled, yeah. Justin Willis, unfortunately, took the fight on a week's notice and tried to cut a bunch of weight. He has to cut down to 265, the heavyweight limit. He has to actually cut down to that. Yes, he is actually, I believe, almost missed weight one time. Like, that's how big he is. And unfortunately, the weight cut was too much, and he had a medical issue, so he was deemed unfit. So poor Tybura, man. He was supposed to fight Henrique de Silva. That fight fizzled, and now this one fizzled. So he'll still get his show money. You know, he'll get paid $10,000 and not have to lift a finger.
Yeah, he fucking probably ain't complaining. Let's call it a spade. Spade, he ain't complaining.
Yeah.
Do you reckon there'll be a substitute? Do you reckon there'll be a substitute match, or will we just not?
No, they'll just drop it. Yeah.
So we only get two fights in the early prelims.
Yep, that's probably what'll happen.
So say even if both go 15 minutes, both go the full length, that's 30 minutes on a 90-minute Fight Pass early prelims. Damn, that's going to be a lot of fill. But for me, if they're talking about the fights, I think it could really help me get more emotionally attached to the fighters, because I'll be like, blah, blah, blah. So I'll actually be watching that. Everyone else is going, I'll be like, I can't believe. Oh, let me write that down. So I think it helped me a lot.
That's good, man. That's good that you have the attitude about it, because I'll be bored out of my mind.
Just remember that the good old Southern English bastard will be sat there.
I'll remember that, man. I'll remember that, and I'll be really happy. I also realize that you're watching this super early in the morning too, and I'm watching it at like 6:30.
Yeah, it'll be 11:30 p.m.
when it first starts.
PM, I think.
Yeah.
There, and then I think the final fight will finish nearly around about 6 a.m. depending on length.
So what do you do? What allows you? Now I'm going to interview you, man, because I got my own podcast, so it's hard not to interview the other person. What is it that you do that allows you to be able to do this so late? Because right now it's about ready to be 2 a.m. for you, and you're going to do another hour after this. Yep. So you're going to go to at least 3 a.m, which means if that's the last thing you do, you're not getting to sleep until 3:30 at the absolute earliest. Yep. If you're anything like me, you need to wind down for about an hour, so you're not getting to bed till 4 a.m. So how are you able to do that, man? I can't do that.
Right. Well, an amazing girlfriend, an amazing family. This is it's kind of like it's like a shed, but it's been innovated into an office. Like over there, that's my dad's office. My dad owns his own business, and he was like, I don't want you in the house shouting it at this time of the morning. So I was like, okay, cool. So I've been entitled to have this. So I have my own desk over here, I have my own drawers, etc., etc. So I just come out here, and it's literally just a literally 5-step walk from the house, but no one can hear me because this gray stuff you see is like soundproof insulation. Like no one can hear me ever. I've never been told to be quiet once. So with that in mind, the reason why I can do this with my job, because I've been at my job for 3+ years, nearly 4 years now. It's like a restaurant type gimmick, and it allows me to pick the schedule. And I said I left because of the way the schedules were, and I wasn't allowed to do anything. So I was like, look, I'll make a deal with you. If I can just work 4/11 every single day, that's 7 hours, a solid shift, so I can afford everything plus more. And they were like, oh, just give me them 5 days a week. Magic. That'll be perfect. He's like, only if you sign the contract to stay. I was like, fucking fine. Blah, 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 blah. So basically, this is my life. So 4 to 11, like today, 4 to 11, I went to work, came back. My girlfriend fell asleep at midnight, so I spent an hour with her. And then she, bless her, lets me come down here from 12 till 5, maybe 6. The maximum I stay in here is 5:30. Anything past 5:30, no, because that's not fair on everyone else who's just waking up. I don't agree with that. But basically, everyone has just kind of helped me with this. And I started just doing wrestling podcast around about 2.5 years ago now, just my own little channel. It was nothing, and then I went on to another pro wrestling website, and then I moved on to this, and it's just turned into that. And now we do some marketing. Like for instance, in 2 weeks, I've got a physical meeting with a wrestling promoter for us to market them. And it's really cool stuff. And I'm hoping to do that with MMA sometime, because I don't know the mixed martial arts scene down here, but there needs to be a lot more fights down here.
Yeah.
So the only issue is being that when I come on here, sometimes I have to be careful with what I say, because it's obviously a legit company. So it's kind of a bit more difficult. But the reason why I can do this is I'm on American time schedule. Like, I'm not tired now. It feels like around about 8, 9 o'clock, which I'm guessing is
9
what
o'clock right now here. Yeah, it's about 9 o'clock here. Yeah.
I feel like, okay, I've got about 2 more hours in the tank. And then usually around about 4:30 to 5, I start feeling a bit tired. So I'd like to go upstairs. And the best thing about it is the kitchen is obviously the back to the fucking house is the kitchen. So I get to go in the kitchen. I can make myself some dinner, calm myself down, and then go to bed. Not dinner, sorry, early breakfast, and then go to bed.
Yeah.
And then so my sleep is usually about 5 to 6 a.m. till about 2 p.m., 1 p.m. It depends. On the weekend, when my girlfriend isn't at university, college, whatever, I get up at 12. So tomorrow's the killer day for me. So I'll have to get up at 12:01. So that's why I did the show a bit earlier, so that I can get, the 4 till 12, the 8 hours. I like to have 8 hours average. I believe it or not, sometimes I actually have more than that. It just depends on who's around the house. But they, bless them, they don't wake me up. They don't wake me up. And I'm 20 years old, and my goal is by the time my girlfriend's finished university, She'll have a degree. She wants to become a teacher. She'll have her teaching. And then I'm praying by then that I can make enough money from this, the marketing, which people don't realize, the marketing, the advert money and, the Patreon that I've got, that will all come together, that can support me as well as her and to get her own place, basically. So that's my life.
The best thing you can do, which everything that you just said leads up to this, one is goal setting. That is huge for anybody. Always knowing what you're working toward. The reason why people fail all the time. And the reason why they fail is because they have no idea where they're going in the first place. So of course you're going to fail because you don't even know what you're doing. Like, you have to be working towards something, right? So A, you have that. B, you're one of the hardest working people that I've seen so far. And one of the things I pride myself on is like, listen, I'm not the smartest. I'm not the most well-spoken. I don't come from money. I don't have any of that stuff, but I will outwork most people around me, period. I will always be the hardest working person in the room, because if I see someone working harder than me, then that's my target. I'm like, okay, that's what I have to do now. And I don't copy, I don't emulate. That's a big thing too, which again, I think I like what you're doing. I haven't had too much exposure. I'm really busy, obviously, but I haven't had too much exposure. But what exposure I've had, you're good at this. You're very, very good at it. And more so than that, you're constantly putting out content, which is huge. I put out 5 episodes a week, which in the MMA world is, you don't see that. You just don't see that. And I realized that, okay, in order to do this, in order for my name to reach a certain point, I have to do this. I have to just every day. I have 2 kids, a wife, a mortgage, 2 car payments, right? Like, I'm like, if I want to do this for real, I have to put everything into it. And I just have to. And I have to be able to manage everything else too. But I have to have a clear goal of where I'm going, which is what you have. You're good at it. I think you're better at it than I am. I think you're a very well-spoken lad. And, you have a personality that bleeds through. So I think you're doing great, man. I really do. So keep it up for real. And anytime you need anything, let me know.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I genuinely appreciate it. And it's just, I've
welcome.
always knew that. I knew literally my A-levels are business marketing. So I knew I had my eye on Kocosports. I was like, okay, that is going to be my place. That's where I will go. And it took me so long it literally took me like half a year to get just one little co-host mini show on a show that was it was like a Fave 5 show. And then it was like, okay, good job. You can come back for this. And then and now people are accusing me of stealing this channel from, basically we have a boss, Dave Koco's kind of doing with personal issues. And he owns so many businesses that he's kind of hard to keep track of doing fucking podcasts on YouTube, which is fair enough. So people are like, oh, you stole the YouTube channel. It's like, no, I'm a fucking staff member, you imbecile. But anyway, this is a fucking live show. We could put this on all different categories, can't we? We got 2 last fights. We have we back to the card.
Oh, do we really? I didn't even realize that.
We have Ryan LaFleur versus Rowan Carneiro.
Ryan LaFleur.
We've gotten that one.
Ryan LaFleur. Okay,
that was. Why is Blake pick Carneiro then? Has he got a little interview of him?
I don't think so. My guess is, and I'm probably going to get a judging text from him. My guess is that he picked Carneiro because Carneiro's just the guy that's been around longer and he's been a fan for a long time. So LaFleur is the guy that's sort of up and coming a little bit. Carneiro's been around for a long time and has kind of one of those like funny personalities. So that's my guess. I know that's why Sean, who does the breakdown episode with me, that's why he picked Carneiro. So
okay,
people are kind of
Sean's a great coach. I really enjoyed having him on I think it was Monday. I think I had him on. That was a really great show.
He's great, man. He just had a kid too. Congratulations, just had a kid. He's great, man. I was so thankful that the MMA Prophet was open to getting somebody else on the show, because when I first started doing the breakdowns, it was just me. And I just realized that nobody wants to fucking hear me talk for 90 minutes about fights. Like that's not interesting to listen to. Like there needs to be some back and forth. So I just started getting like random fighters to do the breakdowns with me. And then I would get like random, like I had, you ever heard of like Red Jumpsuit Apparatus, the band? I had the guitarist from Red Jumpsuit Apparatus come on and break down the card with me. So I start doing like kind of hokey shit like that, just because I knew I had connections. And so eventually I found the MMA Prophet. I said, hey man, can you come on and do a show with me? And we finished it, and it was so awesome that I was like, this is it, man. Let's do him every week. So for the last 3-4 weeks, it was just him. And then I don't know how this came about, but somebody approached me about like, hey, doing more DraftKings content. And I was like, man, I don't know. Like, I used to be good at it, but I don't really do it anymore. And I was like, and then a light bulb went off and went, Sean, let's get Sean on. Like, and let's just have them both. Let's have MMA Prophet focus on the betting lines. Let's have Sean focus on the DraftKings. And then I can just kind of do my thing, which is go on rants about like superficial shit about the fights, right? Like, I don't even dig into the fights. I just go on the superficial stuff, like what the fights really mean. Like, kind of like what I did with the 145, right? Like, so extrapolate that out for an entire card. Like, I go through the fights and I talk about what these fights actually mean, what the storylines are, what led to this fight, why this fight's happening, and then I let them break down the DraftKings and gambling aspects.
That's interesting. I'm gonna, once I finish this week, because these are the 5 that I've done. Like you said, when you do a show with someone, you just know if it's. You can just tell if it's good or not. And the 5 people that I've had this week, they're the 5 that I'm like, okay, I may have, get in touch with a fighter or a promoter or anything like that. They might come on. But then, because I do it daily, apart from Saturday, I take Saturday off, but obviously I'll be watching the pay-per-view. But I have to have someone on. Like, I find it bored. Like, I wouldn't listen to myself talk for an hour. So why would I expect anyone else to? Because you have to have the back and forth. It just feels normal to have that. Each one was different. And I think that with, like, for instance, Sean, it's more like professional. This is kind of like professional plus kind of like friends talking kind of deal. And then you got Blake, who's just, my man, how's it going, my man? Like, he's just that you can get the humor in, but also serious at the same time. And you got Keith, who's serious and funny as well. And it's just, it clicked. Like, after all shows, it's like, we've never met, we've never had one conversation minus Twitter. This is our first physical conversation. And you would have thought that we would have been talking for fucking 10 years.
Yep.
That's what I like.
I do a weekly show with Keith called it's all on the Loudmouth MMA podcast, imprint or whatever. But I do a weekly news show with him where we just talk about the news, Keith and I. I don't do anything weekly with Blake, although tonight I'm doing something with Blake. I think it's called like WTF, like what the fuck did you say? Where he calls me out on everything that I got wrong in the breakdown that he disagrees with. So that'll be fun. We might start doing that like every other week or something. And then of course Sean is now on weekly on the breakdown. So I very intentionally sent those guys over to you because I knew I've done a podcast with all these people. I knew how good they were, because I had the same feeling that you had, which was as soon as I talked to them, I said, okay, this person is able to make a connection, right? I'm sitting in a basement in Dayton, Ohio, right? And you're in Southern England, or you know what I mean? Like, and we've never talked to each other before other than through messages on Twitter. And I feel like I've known you for 5 years, and I knew that those guys are the same way. It's like these guys are all kind of like that. So that's good. I'm really happy it's working out because I'm a good judge of character. I think that's what that means.
Yeah, it was just brilliant when they came in. I was like, oh, thank God, because with the wrestling ones, they're like, oh yeah, bring him on, and you bring him on, and you just want to like smash your head on the microphone, like, you suck, I want to kick you off, Whereas the MMA fans, I don't mean to say this because obviously, out of the 7,000+ subscribers, I guarantee 6,000 are just pure wrestling fans. I don't want to say this, but MMA fans just seem a bit more intelligent. Like, I can tell in the wrestling, we have the live comments available during the wrestling shows. I can tell which one now. I can tell which ones watch mixed martial arts and which one just watch wrestling but have brain cells. And then there's the guys who'll come on and they'll be like, they'll make like fake accounts from like really big time wrestling YouTubers, but they'll have the same logo, the same description, upload the same videos, and you're like sending tweets to them saying, hey, look, what the fuck did I do to you? Why are you sending me hate mail? And they're like, dude, that's not me. And then you actually go to find the channel and it's them just mocking them. So it's kind of like very sad children, whereas it's MMA is very adult.
Now,
you'd be shocked at some of the shit.
Well, you'll be shocked too. If you're on Facebook, we'll find each other on Facebook after this, and I'll invite you into some of the UFC groups, because boy, oh boy, are people real trashy. I mean, there's a mass majority of Americans who are some very, very, we'll just say not upstanding individuals. Right? There's a cliche American around the world. I was in the military, so I knew a lot of these cliched Americans. I'm not one of them. I was in the military, but I'm not one of those people. But there's a lot of very cliche Americans. Like if you were to watch an American on like Korean television, right? Those people are real. Like that's a real thing, and there's a lot of them. Most of them live like in Kentucky and Alabama and Georgia and in those areas. But anyway, that's also a mass majority of the UFC market. So you do run into those same problems.
Yeah, because I just got up on my phone because I screenshot shared. This guy, he's like, he even though he knows I'm on every single video, he'll comment. So he commented, I won't give him name value because he doesn't deserve it. But he said, shut the fuck LK, you suck so damn much, burn in hell and slit your wrists, you fucking inbred.
That's great. Now, here's the thing, man. If you don't have people hating on you, then you're doing something wrong. You're being too passive, right? In order to, the other thing is people hate when they see others successful at something that they want to do, right? A lot of people want to do a podcast, right? I wanted to do a podcast for years before I actually sat down to do it. On various things. I've wanted to do political podcasts. I've wanted to do podcasts for movie reviews, book reviews. I want to do podcasts for several different things. And I never did it. Now, I wasn't like a hater, so to speak, but I never did a podcast, right? It wasn't until one day I finally said, okay, MMA, like, let's do this. Like, let's just do a podcast. And it didn't take very long to start getting people commenting on YouTube videos or sending me messages, or if I'm doing a live fight companion, to get like people writing shitty things in there. It didn't take very long. And at first it bothered me. Like, it really did. At first I'm like, why? Like, what am I? I'm just doing like a thing. But then I just, I talk to people and I had fighters on the show and stuff. And they're just like, dude, that's what happens, man. Like, people see that you're successful. People see that you're doing something that they want to do, but are completely unable to do it. And it pisses them off and they hate it. So this is how they lash out, right? They're like, I wish I could be that, but they never will be. Even though what you and I are doing isn't very hard. You just have to do it. I mean, that's the trick of it. Like, that's the secret. This isn't very hard. It's time consuming. That's the biggest thing. It's time consuming. Yeah. But it's not very.
You have to be dedicated.
You have to be dedicated, man. But it's not complicated. This is very, very simple. I sit behind a microphone and just yabber about shit that I would be talking about with my friends anyway. Like, the conversation we're having right now, I would have with any of my friends. You know what I mean? So let's record that conversation and get some traction and get some ad money from it. You know what I mean? Like, that's really all that this is. This isn't rocket science. This isn't complicated. But people are unsure of themselves, so they'll never do it. They don't know how to go about starting it, right? Like, doing I heard you, and one thing I did hear was you and Blake talking about like the iTunes stuff, right? Like, that's hard. It's hard to get that set up. And it costs money. Like, I use SoundCloud. I don't use PodGarden or whatever. I use SoundCloud. I pay like $20 a month to like have all my shit everywhere. Like, and it's, it costs money, but I don't come from money. Like, I work my ass off. You know what I mean? But people hate it, dude. Not me. People don't hate me or whatever, but I'm saying like success in general. Like, people hate when other people are successful because they think that they are owed that. They think that they should be successful. They think that their voice should be heard. If you want your voice heard, then have it be heard. Go do something. If you think that you can podcast better than LK here, then fucking do it, man. Do it. Start a YouTube channel. Compete. Because here's the thing. If 10 people hear that and go, I do hate him, I'm going to start 10 channels. It's just going to make you work that much harder, which means you're going to get that much better, right? Because they're not going to be able to keep up with you. If anything, they're just going to push you. So that's how I view it. If people really do hate what I'm doing, then start your own podcast. You know what I mean? Like when I started this, I was competing. I don't view it as I was competing, but in reality, I was competing with umpteen MMA podcasts. Well, my name is kind of floated to the top a little bit. And that's because, you know, I didn't view it the same way. I said, I'm not competing with those people. I'm competing with myself. I am my own biggest critic here. No one can criticize me as much as I criticize myself. And as soon as that happens, then I'm fucking up and I need to reassess. Because if you're able to criticize me more than I'm willing to look at myself, there's something wrong. So yeah, man, let them hate, dude. It pushes you and it's funny and you realize that they're hating you because you're doing something to push their buttons, which means you're being successful.
Who knows? Maybe in like 10 years' time, we can fucking both go to UFC 300 and fucking have a beer and say, "Damn it, we made it in life. We're fucking
we made it."
We still got one last fucking fight. We still got one last fight. Felipe Nova versus Rick Glenn.
Smart money is on Rick Glenn, but I'm picking Felipe Nova.
Okay, but considering it was unless Blake picked Glenn for a different reason.
No, Rick Glenn does make sense here. He's the younger guy. He's the guy that has a lot more to gain. Felipe Nova, you kind of just know what he is, right? Like, it's not that he's like a veteran. I guess he is. I don't know. He's kind of an odd one. Like, he's very, very inconsistent. You don't really know what you're going to get from him. But there's not much of a future there. With a guy like Rick Glenn, there's a legitimate future there. So I think you want to see Rick Glenn win, right? I mean, like, you want to see the guy that has a bigger future not get bogged down by a guy who isn't going anywhere. And that this win against Rick Glenn isn't going to take him anywhere. So that's kind of why people, I think, are gravitating towards Rick Glenn, because they kind of just want him to win. Not like he's anything special per se, but I would still say Felipe Nova has more than a 50-50 chance of winning this. I mean, he's the better all-around fighter. He's been there in the situations that Rick Glenn has not been in. You know, he's fought the tougher people, and you know, but he's extremely inconsistent. And so I will say that. So
who do you think I should go for then? Because I don't really know who to go for then. Because
boy,
two of them said you made a great point for Novia.
I would say go Rick Glenn. Go Rick Glenn.
Go Glenn.
Go Glenn.
I guess it's 2-1. It makes sense too. So just to reiterate who I've gone for: gone to Randamie, Brunson, Souza, what's his fucking name? Tachara, Poirier, Brown, Hayes or Hayes, Makachev, Brooks, LaFleur, and Glenn. So watch out for them. If they win, I'm going to be throwing money around on the UFC 208 breakdowns next week. And if they lose, I got some blocking to do on social media.
Yeah, then none of us are ever coming back.
I'll be fucking coming here solo, fucking depressed, like getting my bank card and ripping it off. It cost me £15. Yeah, right. But I appreciate you coming on and taking the time. I apologize to SOS Wrestle Talk, who's probably waiting in the shadows right now for 20 minutes.
Sorry, guys.
I apologize, but
this interview has been brought to you by Cincinnati's own Rheingeist. So, you know, I was getting progressively more drunk as we were going on. So, you know, my mouth gets moving.
That was fine. It was fun. The longer shows tend to do better numbers anyway. So I always try to get an hour.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, we'll be back. We're going to preview the New Japan show that happens tomorrow. I have no idea how I'm going to watch the New Japan show because I've got UFC 208 to watch. I guess I'll watch it Sunday morning. I have no idea, but there will be a New Japan preview coming out of SOS Wrestle talking about 10 to 15 minutes whenever I send them a link. Do you want to promote yourself before, just because there's some like new live viewers, if you want to promote yourself?
Oh, sure. I'll make it real quick. Twitter, Facebook at Loudmouth MMA tomorrow. This is being posted like right now or tonight, right?
Yeah. right now.
Okay.
Tonight.
So tomorrow, if you're watching this on Saturday during the main event, you can watch it. I do a live fight companion. So I watch the fights and we talk about nonsense. So if you liked any of our nonsensical banter, then come on over to the live fight companion. We talk about anything, everything. The last fight companion, we wound up. My co-host has a Tinder account, which I don't know if you've heard of Tinder.
Yeah,
he has a
I've
Tinder account. So I took control of his Tinder account, and we basically just went through swiping left and right and talking about what we're doing. And then I got into his messages, and I was reading his messages out loud, conversations he was having with these women, which were so funny. He's not the smoothest of gentlemen. Shout out to Tyler David from the Neighborhood Play podcast. But anyway, so that's what we did for like 45 minutes. And then before that, who knows? I couldn't even tell you what all we did. So those live fight companions are a lot of fun. So definitely come out. It's on Facebook. Anybody who has a Facebook account can come watch us. So go to Loudmouth MMA on Facebook, find us, add us, and you'll be able to watch it.
On iTunes, because I have a podcast addict, so I can check out everything on iTunes. Is it Loudmouth MMA? Yes,
Loudmouth MMA on iTunes, SoundCloud, anywhere where you can get a podcast. The only place that we aren't is YouTube. I mean, that's really it, and that's calculated, which I have my own reasons. But I will eventually be on YouTube, but not quite yet.
You're not a fan of YouTube, then? You fucking can't stand YouTube, then?
I love YouTube.
Fair enough. But again, like, comment, subscribe on this channel. Check out the iTunes account, because if it's as interesting as this is, you're missing out not watching more. Again, we'll be back with MMA AM Monday to Friday as always. Just going live with Wrestle AM shortly. Lots of forward to on the channel. Stay safe, everyone. Stay well. We'll both be catching your asses down the line.